Y'all sit back and enjoy this next one here I'm going to do for you guys. Oh, country tune. Well, I loved her, but I love to fish. Spent all day out on this lake, and here is all I catch. But today she met me at the door, said I would have to choose. If I'd hit that fishing hole today, she'd be packing all her things and she'd be gone by noon. I'm gonna miss her, oh yeah, when I get home. Right now I'm on this lake shore, and I'm sitting in the sun. I'm sure it'll hit me when I walk through that door tonight. Hey, I'm gonna miss her. Oh, looky there, I gotta buy. All right, come on. Well, I'm gonna miss her when I get home. 'Cause right now I'm on this lake shore, and I'm sitting in the sun. I'm sure it'll hit me when I walk through that door tonight. Hey, I'm gonna miss her. Oh, looky there, another bite. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna miss her. Oh, looky there, I gotta buy.
Hey, let's give it up for Rob and the band. That's fun right there. Woo! That's good. That's good. Well, hey, welcome to Mission. It is a summer series, Gone Fishing. We kick it off today. We wanted to have a little bit of fun with you, and so that's why Rob was here. If you're wondering, he's going to kick it off. And Joel, in just a minute, is going to be coming out here, and he's going to be talking about how Jesus kicked off his ministry with 4 men, telling them how to become fishers of men. But hey, my name's Kevin. Again, welcome to Mission. I'm one of the pastors here on staff. And for those of you joining us online today, thanks so much for tuning in. We wish you were here, but we understand it's summer. You could be all over the country, but we hope to see you here with us very, very soon. Well, we do have an incredible service plan. We got Brandon and Diane are going to kick it off. And again, Gone Fishing with Joel is going to be out here in just a minute. But for all the women in the room, you heard me last week invite you to the summer speaking series. This is for women only. Yeah, we can get excited about that. The room is already packed full. We got a ton of registrations. We got a room for a little bit more. And so that's what we want to invite you to. It kicks off this Thursday night at 7 p.m. Diane, who's going to be up here leading us in worship, is going to kick that off for us. Again, free childcare. Who wouldn't want to be here at 7 p.m. on Thursday night? It's going to be fun. We're going to have a blast with that. Go to missionaz.org, and you can go ahead and register there. There's a big banner. Just click on it. It's real simple. Hey, well, let's do this. Go ahead and stand up and tell the person next to you what the biggest fish you've ever caught.
All right, Mission, let's get ready to sing together. We ready? Come on. You make the darkness run and hide. You bring the broken back to life. Only you can, only you can. You set me free from every chain. You fill my heart with songs of praise. Only you can, only you can. Come on! Jesus, you're the only reason that I'm even breathing. I am wide awake. My heart beats only for your glory. My hands reach up for you to hold me. My soul sings, Father, you are holy. My feet dance to your rhythm, to your rhythm. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Yeah! You left the glory of your throne to bring this runaway back home. Only you can, only you can. You give me love, you give me life. You keep me dancing through the night. Only you can, only you can. My heart beats only for your glory. My hands reach up for you to hold me. My soul sings, Father, you are holy. My feet dance to your rhythm, to your rhythm. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Oh yeah. All right, Mission. Let's sing Jesus. Jesus, you're the only reason that I'm even breathing. I am wide awake. You move me, your freedom is consuming. I feel it rushing through me. I'll never be the same. My heart beats only for your glory. My hands reach up for you to hold it. My soul sings, Father, you are holy. My feet dance to your rhythm, to your rhythm. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Oh yeah, come on, sing. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name.
Amen. Every beat of our heart sings the praise of God today. And we lift our voices and join together in worship this morning. From beginning to the end, all my life is in your hands. This whole world may hold me down, but it can never drown you out. 'Cause I'm not merely flesh and bone. No, I was made for something more. You are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. within me, Christ who lives within me. From beginning to the end, you deserve the glory. You deserve the glory. We believe it. That it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. Christ who lives within me. Oh, from beginning to the end, you deserve the glory. Father, you deserve the glory. 'Cause you are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive. You are strong in my brokenness. You're sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, you are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. Even in the fire. Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. Amen. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Let's take a moment, ask ourselves, do I believe that? Do I believe in what he says over what the world says? Over what everyone else tells me who I am? Even over what I believe. I believe him. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am, Lord. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. 'Cause who the Son sets free, always free indeed. And I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. And I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Yes, you are. Mission, don't you forget that today. I pray that you would walk in that truth. Thank you for singing that with us. You can have a seat.
Thanks so much. That is quickly becoming my favorite song. I absolutely love that. Today we get to celebrate. We get to celebrate that we are a child of God, that he loves us so much, that our Father in heaven, our Creator, like the song said, the highest King welcomes me in his house. We get to celebrate that we're chosen, that we're not forsaken, that we have a God that is for us, that he's not against us, right? Jesus said that in my Father's house, there are many rooms. And when I come back, I'm going to take you with me. And that's what we get to celebrate today. If you're brand new here today, this is a place that you belong in. You can become a child of God here, and we welcome you here. There are plenty of space in the Father's house for you. But today, I also, as we sat there and we sang the words of that song, I recognize that for some of you, you show up today and you hear those words and you don't feel chosen. You probably feel forsaken. Maybe you don't feel worthy to be a part of God's family. Maybe you're struggling with your own family. There is good news. The invitation to you is open to become a child of God, to put your faith in Jesus today. Because here's the deal, nothing can separate you from the love of Jesus. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. God's grace is sufficient for you, and that's the invitation. The better news is this, is you don't have to earn it. There's nothing that you can do other than to truly just accept it today. That is the encouragement for you. We love for you not to leave today without having a conversation with somebody. If you're ready to take that step, we would love to celebrate that with you. We want to be your church and walk that path with you. Well, this is the time where we actually move into our offering. We get to continue to worship by receiving an offering. I'm going to invite our volunteers down, but this is what this church is all about, is that we get to lead people to find thriving life in Jesus. And I can't think of a better investment to make into the local church here at Mission to be about the next generation and our next door neighbor. I'd love to invite the volunteers down to receive that offering.
5 kilos, so that's 10 pounds. Honey, don't, you gotta hold it. Oh my, no way.
All right, Sweetie Bee. Good job. We got a fish.
Trout, say trout.
Whoa!
I already heard several oh no's in the audience. It's not the way you really want to start. A couple of weeks ago, I had to do something I've never gotten to do before. You're in the danger zone if you're in the front row, by the way. I've never been able to fly fish. I've always wanted to fly fish. In fact, since the fall of my freshman year in college, I always wanted to fly fish because some of you know what I'm talking about. A movie came out called A River Runs Through It. And we all watched Brad Pitt fish, and we thought, oh my goodness, he is so cool, and that looks like so much fun. And I just, from that day, I always wanted to go fly fishing. I'm really serious about the danger zone here. I just learned to do this a couple weeks ago. So there's a real fly on the end of that. There's no hook, by the way. I'll just say that real quick. I need some help really fast. Would one of you guys that's sitting on the aisle be willing to help me out real quick? You'll help me? There, look at that. Would you give this guy a round of applause real quick? What's your name? What's your name? Ragu, would you stand up real quick? Would you hold your hand out like this? Just no, stand up. There you go. Hold it out like this. I'm gonna try and see if I can cast this fly right into your. How many people think I can do this? You think I can do this real quick? You didn't sound very confident in my ability here, real quick. Ragu, there is no way I'm gonna cast this thing at you. I'll probably put your eye out, but bless you for being willing to stand there real quick. Can we get him a t-shirt really fast? I'm not throwing this thing anywhere near you. I appreciate that, Ragu. That was not a plant, by the way, so thank you for doing that. Here's the deal. We went fly fishing a couple of weeks ago, and man, I had the time of my life. I've been fishing plenty of times as a kid. My dad took me fishing. I've been deep sea fishing, but I'd never been fly fishing, and it always seemed like it was sort of this different thing, and a buddy of mine had invited me since I moved here several times, because back east there just wasn't a lot of fly fishing, especially in the South. Everybody goes bass fishing, and so the timing didn't work out, and I had opportunity to go. And so 2 weeks ago we went, and I got to show you some real quick pictures real quick. We had these guides. These guys were unbelievable. This is a guy named Marcus. This is Mark, my friend Mark. He actually organized the trip. There was 8 guys that went on the trip. Marcus is one of 4 guides. He was kind of the lead guide on our trip. And these 4 guides they're the best outfit on the river. We were up on the San Juan River, which I didn't know was like some world-class fishing. If you're a fly fisherman, you're like, who took you to the San Juan when you've never been fly fishing before? Newbies shouldn't be up there. I was trying not to embarrass Mark and my friends, but Marcus was leading the way. I was in his boat the first day, and he's like a fish whisperer. He's like unbelievable. So that was Marcus. This is Corey. Corey is a blast. He's a lot of fun. I was in his boat the second day. This is some dude looking way too serious in the background. That's actually my nervous face. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it wrong. I know I'm gonna do it wrong. Here, this is JB. JB is like one of the coolest cats going. Really, really fun guy. And there was another guy, Jeff. I didn't get a picture of him. He's actually in this last picture. You'll see our boats. Next picture. We were eating lunch on the bank here. But we're in what's called drift boats. Jeff's down here. But these 4 guys, Marcus, Jeff, JB, and Corey, these guys are serious, and they're amazing at their craft. In fact, people talk about going fishing, they don't catch anything. Not if you go with these guys. In fact, I would even say we weren't fishing, they were fishing. We were catching. That's what we were doing. So we might as well just call it catching. We throw the water in, and literally they take the boat to where the fish is, and then we reel them in, and we were having a blast. It was so much fun. But in this experience, I began to think about the scriptures in a whole new way. These four guys that were like remarkable fishermen, and this is sort of, they grew up around this. This is in their blood. Like, this isn't just a job. Like, this is their life. This is what they do. They're on the river over 250 days a year, all of them. And you know, out there leading fishing trips. And I began to think about Jesus' four first followers. The first four followers of Jesus, if you remember, were fishermen. If you're not familiar with the Bible, here's how Matthew, in the first book of the New Testament, this is how he recounts it. This is what happened. Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. So these two brothers, they're out there, and they were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And Jesus says to them, "Come follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people." Which, at first, that's sort of a weird invitation, because it's like, first of all, how do you do that? And I'm not sure that that's even safe. And what if you hook one of them in the mouth? Like, that's not even really a good idea. But I don't even know if they knew what Jesus meant, but this is what Jesus said. And look what Matthew tells us. At once, they left their nets and they followed him. To which I go, and again, just at a cursory reading, a first reading of this story, if you're not familiar with the story, you think, what? I mean, we read it too easily, but like, I'm thinking about these guys. If I gave them some invitation to go do something else, I met them for the first time, they're not leaving their boats. They're not leaving their fishing rods. They're not leaving their business. And this not only happened once, it happened twice. These guys have a good gig. And there were two other brothers. In fact, Matthew goes on, he says, going from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, which, by the way, Zebedee's just fun to say. Will you just say that with me real quick? Zebedee. Isn't that a fun thing to say? It's like, Zebedee-doo-dah, Zebedee. Okay. You guys, we can have fun. We're talking about the Bible. Loosen up. Okay, so they were in a boat with their father, I'll say it again, Zebedee, preparing their nets, and Jesus called to them, and immediately, look at this, they left the boat and their father, and they followed Jesus. To which, if you're really, really honest, you know, some of you are going, you know, we shouldn't question the Bible, and it is what it says it is, but like, I just go, really? Like, these guys just left their business. They left their livelihood. They left their families. They left their father who established the business for them. Now, some of you, you've heard a sermon about this before, where it's like, well, of course they did. This was Jesus. And following Jesus requires a leap of faith. And when Jesus calls, you just follow him. And you need to follow, no questions asked. And if he's not Lord of all, he's not Lord at all. And you've heard sermons, and I sort of know what those preachers are getting at, but they sort of are saying, look, you don't need more information. You just need to follow. You just need to have faith. The problem is, our faith is not based on nothing. Our faith is actually based on information. Information given to us by credible witnesses, reliable information by credible witnesses. And these four guys were key to the information that we have. Just as a side note, if you're new to Mission, in some churches, you can't question what you're told to believe. You're told to believe a certain set of things, and if you question it, you're seen as somebody who's lesser than, or you have doubts, you don't have faith. We're never gonna tell you that. Here's why. You should question. You should explore. You should investigate. And that is allowed. You know how I know? It's because Luke, one of the four guys that wrote the Gospels, Luke said that before he wrote his account, he thoroughly investigated everything that he wrote down. He wanted to make sure that it was all true. He wanted to make sure that it was all accurate. Not only that, I imagine there were stories like this, because Luke wasn't present. There were stories like this that Luke goes, wait, that doesn't even seem real. Like, I need to know the backstory. And I think that's why when Luke recorded this story, he gives us two important details. If you have your Bible, Luke chapter 5 is where we're gonna spend most of our time. I'm gonna start at the end of chapter 4, but if you open to Luke chapter 5, by the time you get there, you'll catch up with me. Jesus had been teaching in the synagogues, and he heals a guy, and news spreads, and Simon, who we know as Peter, hears about it, and he invites Jesus to come to his house. And Luke tells us specifically why this happened. He said that Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Simon because Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. To which we go, high fever is not a big deal, but in their day and age, people died from things like that. They didn't have modern medicine. And so his mother-in-law was really in trouble medically, which I just have to say, some of you would have just let it ride and said, hey, let's just see what happens with the fever. But Peter apparently loved his mother-in-law, unlike some of you do. And so he invites Jesus, he invites Jesus to help his mother-in-law, and Jesus comes over, and he bent over her and rebuked the fever. Look at this, and it left her. She got up at once, and she began to wait on them. And all in the same day, by sunset that day, the people brought to Jesus all who had various kinds of sickness, and laying his hands on each of them, he healed them. Now, it's important to note why Jesus healed people. Jesus did lots of miracles, but one of the reasons Jesus healed people is because in that day and age, they didn't know a lot about germs and things. And they equated sin with sickness. That you see this throughout the Gospels too, that when somebody had a sickness or they were lame in some way or they were blind, the question that often got asked is, what did they do to deserve this? What sin did they commit that caused this? And so by healing people, by solving the problem of sickness, Jesus was not only seen as having authority over sickness, he was seen as having authority over sin. This gave Jesus the credibility. This gave Jesus the leverage to speak into the spiritual condition, not just the physical condition. That's why Luke chapter 5, if you're there, verse 1, we're gonna pick it up right there. We shouldn't be surprised that one day, as Jesus is standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. There's a bunch of people crowded around, and they want to hear what Jesus has to say because he has this credibility. And while it was happening, people were crowding around. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. Now, the reason they were washing their nets is because they were done fishing. It was over. We find out in a few minutes, this is mid-morning sometime. They had been fishing all night. And the reason they fished at night is because during the day, the top water would warm up, which would force the fish deeper. So they fish at night when the top water is cool, the fish would come up to feed, it'd make it easier to catch the fish. And so they're washing their nets, and Jesus gets into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and he asked him to put out a little bit from the shore. And then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. So you imagine this is a great little environment. Jesus puts out in this boat. There's a whole bunch of people on the shore, and Jesus is teaching them. And when he had finished speaking, Jesus did something unique. It's not something we think of today, as being unique, but Jesus gave an invitation. And it's not an invitation like you and I think of. That wasn't the invitation yet to give your whole life, to follow him with your whole life. Jesus gives a simple invitation to Peter to take a small step. Simon, or Peter, was in the boat with him, and he invites him to take a small step of trust in him. And he said to Simon, Luke tells us, put out in the deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Remember, they've been out all night. They're washing their nets. They're putting up for the day. They're done. They're tired. It's time for a nap. They work at night. They sleep during the day. And Simon answered, almost reflexively, Master, we've worked hard all night, and we haven't caught anything. So, Jesus, I know you're some sort of authority. I've watched you heal people. You healed my mother-in-law. And so this term master he uses as a term of respect. But here's the thing. We haven't caught any fish when you're supposed to catch fish in the middle of the night. There's no way. There's no way we're gonna catch some fish during the day. Not only that, we just got done cleaning up all of our stuff, and we're sort of done for the day, and I'm fine to let you use my boat to teach, but this is not the right time. The first day when we went fishing, I was in Marcus's boat, and we were sort of doing the beginner type fishing where they basically say, hey, throw your fish your rod in the water, and we'd cast out there, and my bobber's sitting out there in the water. They don't like to call it a bobber. If you're a real fly fisherman, you call it an indicator. It's a bobber. So it's sitting out there in the water, and it's sitting out there in the water, and he's moving the boat. And he basically takes the boat, we're drifting down the water. He takes the fly that's on the rod to the fish. So he's really doing the fishing. And we're catching lots of fish. We're catching some little ones, some medium-sized ones. And we get down the river, and it just so happened, and we didn't think this was gonna happen, it just so happened the conditions got to be right to where we could do some real fishing. It's called dry fly fishing. Some of you, you're fly fishermen, you know what this is. This is not as easy. This isn't throw your line in the boat, in the water, and I'll take it and we'll catch some fish. This is, you have to throw it to a certain spot. And then it's gonna float down and you're gonna catch a fish. And Mark, who's a really experienced fisherman, and he wouldn't call himself an expert, but he's a good fisherman. He was gonna do this first, and I wasn't even really gonna get a turn, but Mark throws it over this rock, and Marcus saw a spot where he thought there was some fish. He throws it just above this rock, and it comes down, and bam, he hits this probably the biggest fish we had caught to that point that day. And he pulls it out on the dry fly. It was so fun. The fish comes up out of the water and grabs. I mean, it's just so different. It's not, the bobber didn't go underwater. This thing came up out of the water. It was awesome. And so I was like, man, I want to try that. And it was kind of like, yeah, but you've never really done this before. It's first fishing. Marcus is like, I think I can help you. We can get this done. So we circle the boat back around. We go back up, similar area. He goes, now here's what I need you to do. I need you to throw it about 3 feet just above this rock. We're going to watch it go down, and that's going to be our best shot. So we get up there. I'm thinking, I'm nervous. I'm thinking, there's no way I can do this. And lo and behold, truth be told, completely lucky. I throw the fly, and it lands, and like 2 seconds later, fish comes up. This monster, look at this fish. This monster-sized fish, this one right here, this monster-sized fish comes up out of the water, and he grabs my fly, and I pull him in. And it was like, I'm a real fly fisherman now. It was my first cast that I got in this fly fish. It was completely lucky, but it was amazing. It was like this moment where it's like, I don't want to do any of the bobber stuff anymore. This is what I want to do. And we're near the end of the day, and that happens. The next day, I'm out there with Corey. We're in Corey's boat, and we're doing some similar things. They let some water out of the dam, and so the water's muddy, and it wasn't the right conditions to dry fly fish. And we're near the end. I was like, come on, we're going to that section where we were with Marcus yesterday. Like, let's try some dry fly fishing. One of the things I learned from some of the other guys is when they say, whatever you want to do, man. That sort of means like, hey, you're the paying customer, whatever you want to do. If that's what you want to do, you're not going to catch anything, but okay. So Corey says, and I even knew it. Corey's like, all right, whatever you want to do, man. And I'm like, that means we're not going to catch anything, but I think I can do this, And so I don't know if this is what Peter's thinking, but I'm going, look, I think we can do this. And so we spent about an hour out there near the end of our fishing that day, and we didn't catch a darn thing, dry fly fishing in the wrong conditions. And I think Peter's going, Jesus, like, wait, didn't you were a carpenter growing up, right? I grew up fishing. Like, you want to go out further and you want to fish? Like, this isn't a good idea. But Peter responds. This is so important. This is how Peter responds. He says, because you say so, I'll let down the nets. I don't know if that was because you say so and I have some respect for you. I don't know if it's because you say so and everybody's watching and I can sort of pass it off on you because this is embarrassing. Nobody's going out fishing right now. This is not the right time to fish. But because you say so everybody realizes Jesus is the one that wants to go out to the deep water. I know you're all going to laugh at us when we go out there fishing, but like, or if it's because he goes, you know what, you have some level of authority. And because you say so, I'm going to put out and we're going to put down the nets. Here's what's important. Peter didn't know what hung in the balance of taking this small step. He had no idea. Remember, this isn't yet leave everything and come follow me. This is just, hey, will you trust me? Put out a little bit into the deeper water and cast down the nets. You see, sometimes God invites us to take a small step, and oftentimes it doesn't make sense. Like this one with Peter. It didn't make sense. But like Peter, you and I, we don't know what hangs in the balance when God's asking us, when he's nudging us to take a small step. You don't know what hangs in the balance, and neither did Peter. All that they would see, all that he would experience, he had no idea what hung in the balance. But because Jesus said so, Luke tells us that when they had done so, it's important, not believed in him, not accepted him, not patronized him, when they had acted upon the small step Jesus invited them to, when they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. Now, there's important things. This isn't the point of today, but this is so important for most of us. Even with small steps of obedience, this is what you don't want to miss. Obedience is the thing that activates the power of God in our lives. See, some of us want to see God move in a powerful way. We're asking God to do some big things in our lives, yet we haven't taken the simple, small steps of obedience that he's asked us to take. It's not yet to Peter, leave everything. It's just trust me. Put out into the deep. Do this small thing that I'm asking of you if you want to see my power at work. And Peter knew this was a powerful thing. In fact, this is how he responded when Simon Peter saw this. He fell at Jesus' knees and he said, go away from me, Lord. Not just a sign of respect. Go away from me, Lord, because I am a sinful man. I don't know exactly who you are yet. You're more than just some authority over sickness. You're from God. And I don't know yet if you're the Son of God, if you're the Messiah, but there's something about you that's different. And I need you to go away from me because they believe something that many of us believe in this culture, and that is that God distances himself from sinners. Sadly, in that day and age, it's not that much different than in our day and age. Oftentimes, religious leaders perpetuate this idea, this misnomer, that God distances himself from sinners. Yes, God hates sin, but God does not distance himself from sinners. And little did Peter know, Jesus came to reverse that sign of thinking. He came to give us a new picture, a new model, a new caricature of what God was like. But in this moment, Peter was like, there's something special, there's something holy, there's something righteous about you, and I don't deserve to be near you. If you knew about me, you would want to distance yourself from me. For he and all his companions, they were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And look at this. So were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners, Peter, Andrew, James, John, all there that day. Then Jesus said to Simon, presumably the others, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. Jesus, I don't know what that means. But if you're saying you're going to be there, you're saying you're going to lead me, I'm going to assume that that's something good. I just saw what you did. I've seen, I've witnessed, I've watched. So I'm going to come follow you. So they pulled their boats up to shore. They left everything, and they followed him. Now, doesn't that make way more sense? Like when you think about, what you would do to leave and follow Jesus with everything, doesn't that make a ton more sense as to why, after taking a couple of small steps and following Jesus, they were willing to take a big step and follow Jesus with everything when they saw something remarkable and miraculous. Which leads me to the defining moment of our trip. I've been sort of holding on to this story like it's unbelievable. We've been fishing and we're catching all these smaller fish and some medium-sized ones. And the guys sort of let us know, hey, the conditions, we're gonna catch a lot of fish, but the conditions aren't right to really get the big guys. Like we'd love to pull in some big fish for you guys, but like, we're just gonna have some fun. We're gonna pull in a lot of fish, but the conditions aren't right. It's gonna take literally one of the guys at one point said, we were sitting there at lunch, it's gonna take a miracle to pull in one of the monster trouts. Like it's gonna take a miracle. And so I know you're all gonna think, of course, the preacher, this is gonna be, it was an awkward moment. And I thought, well, God does miracles. I'm just gonna pray. So I know this is weird, and some of you are going, you're so weird. I started praying out loud. I prayed out loud, God, would you bless us with a massive fish? We wanna catch this massive fish. I know the conditions aren't right, but would you catch this massive fish? And then sort of under my breath, as we pulled off from the shore, I just was praying in my heart. I was going, okay, God, this could give me the influence. Like I don't have to catch the fish, just somebody this could give me influence of these guys. I mean, I think you have us here for a reason, and you want me to invite these people to come, these guys to come followers of you. So our last day, this is 100%, last day, in the wrong part of the river, at the wrong part of the day, in all the wrong conditions, one of the guys hauls in, look at this massive fish. Look at this thing. It's a monster brown trout, okay? This monster brown trout. And you want to talk about miraculous. Here's how this fish was caught. Look at his mouth. You see the tail? He caught a smaller fish, and the big monster fish ate the smaller fish. That's how he brought him in. You want to talk about a miracle? Praise Jesus. We caught the miraculous fish, right? Come on. Listen, Listen. That's not the point of the story. Who cares about the fish? So we got, they sort of joked about the prayer and the preacher and whatever. And yeah, the crazy things happened. But it opened up a real important spiritual conversation. One of the guys placed his faith in Jesus. We baptized him in the river that day. He drove 7 hours today. Come on out. None of that happened. Stop that. Stop that. I made all of that up. None of that happened. Listen. Some of you are mad at me right now. Listen, here's why I tell you that story, that made up story. Is because most of us are waiting for something like that to happen to follow Jesus in obedience. And we've got it backwards. Miraculous things don't happen until we take small steps of obedience in God. You see, if I'm really honest, after I got back from the trip, as I was studying honestly for today, I thought, oh, me of little faith. I didn't share my faith with any of those guys that day, those days. I don't know if I'll ever see those guys again. I think I will. I want to. I want to go back fishing. But I had an opportunity. And being a follower of Jesus is being a fisher of men. It's not fishing for fish. See, some of us are waiting on something like this to be all in for Jesus, wherever we go. We think, if God did something like that for me, if he'd land the monster trout, if he'd help me land the monster deal, if he'd give me this blessing in my career, this blessing in my family, if he'd solve this thing in my life, if he would show up, I'd be all in. I'd have no trouble following Jesus in obedience. And all the while, Jesus is saying, come follow me. I just want you to take this small step. I want you to take a small step and follow me. And I think Peter, listen to us going, well, if he would do something like that for me that he did for you, I think Peter would go, wait, what? You're talking about the fish trick? The fish trick is what you're talking about? I had all but forgotten about that. In fact, when Peter wrote his letters, we know he influenced Mark's gospel, and that account of the fishing stories are in there. But Peter not only saw the fish trick, he saw Jesus feed 5,000 people. He walked on water. And when Peter had the opportunity to talk about the thing that he placed his faith in, 1 Peter chapter 3, at the very beginning, he says, praise be to God, our Father, God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. For in his great mercy, when he should have distanced himself from me, he should have distanced himself from us. In his great mercy, he has given us a new birth, a new start, a new life into a living hope. Into a living hope. Something that death can't conquer. Something that the greatest problem of humankind, our mortality, can't overcome. He's given us a living hope. And what is it in? How do I know I have this living hope? Not because of the fish trick, not because of the feeding trick, not because of the water walking trick, not because of any of those things. He has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. He's not only given us a living hope, he's given us an inheritance that can never perish or spoil or fade away. He's given us new birth, a new start. He's invited us into something that gives us a living hope regardless of what's happening around us. Regardless of the death and the destruction, the difficulty around us, you can have a living hope in the midst of all that, and you are given an inheritance that nobody can take away from you. In fact, Peter and John, two of these four guys that first followed Jesus, they were so passionate about this. They flooded the streets after the resurrection. They told everybody about this. They're spreading the word. Again, not about the fishing story, not about walking on water, not about Jesus feeding people, about the resurrection. And they were arrested by the same guys that arrested Jesus. And they were threatened. Their lives were threatened. And as they stood in front of them, these guys, these chief priests and these leaders, they commanded them to stop talking about the resurrection. And Peter and John boldly, standing right in front of them, these two guys that were fishermen, they stood in front of them, and here's what they said. They said, we cannot help speaking about what we have seen and what we have heard. You can threaten our lives. We saw what you did to Jesus. But we have a living hope because we saw Jesus conquer death on our behalf. We witnessed it with our own eyes. And you can take our lives in this life, but we have a living hope and we have an inheritance that lasts for eternity. Here's what we're gonna talk about over the next few weeks. Following Jesus, it involves fishing for people. And look, here's the deal. If you're new, especially if somebody invited you, they're sitting next to you right now and they're cringing. They're like, wait a minute, this is weird. Like, I invited my friend here and like this, I thought this was the deal. I invite him here, you tell him about Jesus, and then that's how this deal works. And I get all that, but here's the thing. You may think that's strange and they may even think this is a little bit strange, but let me ask you both a question. If you're the person that invited somebody, aren't you glad you were caught? Come on, think about this. In this moment, your friend who's watching online or your friend that you invited, you want them to know you're so glad you were caught. You might be cringing in this moment because they realize, oh gosh, this is what they invited me here for. But here's the thing. If you were to tell their story, you would tell your story just like Peter and John did. You can't help talking about what you've seen and what you've heard. And the story you would tell about what God's done in your life. Some of you would talk about a peace that's beyond understanding. Some of you would talk about how your faith in Christ led you out of the darkness, a deep darkness of depression. For some of you, you'd talk about how it healed a broken marriage or put your family back together. For all of us, we would talk about how we were delivered from bondage, from our sin. Some of you delivered from bondage of addiction. And the truth is Jesus paid the penalty for all of our sin, this thing that separated us from God, the thing that brings death to life. That's your story. And somebody was used by God in your life, maybe a parent, maybe a friend, maybe a coach. They were used by God to catch you because they were following Jesus. And when they shared their story, you know what they were doing? They were fishing. Because that's what sharing our story is. Peter and John said, we can't help talking about what we've seen and heard. We can't stop talking about what Jesus has done in our lives, what he has done for us. And it's not the fish tricks. He gave his life for us, giving us new life, a living hope, an inheritance nobody can take away from us. So let me ask you, closing, what's your story? What's your story? Some of us just need to be reminded of our story. Some of us need to be reminded of what we've been rescued of. Some of us, we've been doing the church thing too long, and we forget the way life could have gone. Some of you have been rescued from some really difficult things in difficult circumstances. And when you get up here and you tell your story through baptism, we're all like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing that Jesus rescued them. But you know that every kid that's part of our next generation ministries, every child that gets baptized up here, they were rescued from all of those things just before they got into them. They have as remarkable a story, and some of you, that's your story. And you're not in touch with where you could have ended up. What could have happened? The truth is we all have a story. And you need to think about your story. In fact, you need to write it down. That's your homework. You got homework for next week. We're checking homework when you show up at church next week, so make sure you do your homework. You have a story. You need to write it down. And I'll just say this isn't part of the assignment, but you ought to send it to the person that God used to catch you. Do you know what that would do for them? Do you know how that would encourage them? But you have a story. And you ought to send it to that person that God used to catch you, because they could help you. They could continue to encourage you in your faith to be bold in reaching out to other people. You have a story. You should write it down. It's a story that needs to be shared. That's what fishing is. And God wants to use you to share that in some areas of your life. And if you're looking for something, I'll just tell you this. If you're looking for something to help you to be all in, an event to be all in, look no further than the resurrection of Jesus. Don't miss this. This is so important. Not even Peter was all in until after that. Peter saw the fish tricks. Peter saw the feeding tricks. He saw the water walking tricks. He saw the healing tricks. And do you know what happened as Jesus was being arrested and he was being beaten and he was being dragged to his cross? Peter's hanging out on the edge of the crowd with his hoodie up, denying even being associated with Jesus. in the end, all of them walked away until after the resurrection of Jesus. After the resurrection of Jesus, they had a boldness like they had never had before. Jesus had predicted it to them ahead of time. He told them he was gonna die. He told them he was gonna come back 3 days later. He told them where he was gonna meet them. They lived to see him pull it off, and they died making sure everyone knew about it. Some of you may not know this. 4 fishermen. James, widely known as the first martyr of our faith. 44, 45 AD. This isn't the Bible. You can go look this up. You can look this up in history. James was martyred for his faith in 44, 45 AD because he wouldn't stop talking about the resurrection. Peter, martyred in 64 AD. He felt like he was unworthy. They were going to crucify him. He felt unworthy to be associated, to be closely associated with Jesus in that way, so they made him hang him upside down to be crucified. Andrew, he was martyred in 70 AD. And what was remarkable about him is one of the guys that saw him being about to be executed, saw his resolve and decided he was going to believe, and he was martyred with Andrew. John was exiled to Patmos. He lived a martyr's life. He was boiled in oil. He experienced extensive persecution. He was sent off to an island by himself, and he died on an island. These are the four guys that followed Jesus. Let me ask you this. Doesn't this make our excuses for not being bold and sharing our story about our faith, doesn't it seem pathetic in light of what these guys did to make sure you, me, would know what Jesus did for us? So as we close today's question, I want to ask you, what small step is Jesus inviting you to take? For some of you, it's just to write down your story. For some of you, it's to share your story. For some of you, it's to be more bold with some friends at work. For some of you, it's just to come back next week and continue to explore, to continue to investigate. I don't know what the small step God has for you. But the truth is if you're waiting for something to commit, to be all in, look no further than the resurrection. Jesus has already done something miraculous for you, ensuring that you have a living hope, an inheritance that nobody can take away from you. So what's the small step? Today, some of you, Jesus is asking you to take a big step. He's inviting you to place your faith in him. And here's the deal, we're gonna conclude with a song. And I wanna give everybody the opportunity to respond today. I don't know what God's leading you toward. My guess is before you walked in today, there was something that was already, God was stirring in your heart about taking a small step. And as we've talked about taking small steps, some of you know, some of you, it's in your marriage, it's in your finances, it's in your family. I don't know what the small step is, but Jesus is inviting you to take a small step, and your obedience is what activates the power of God in your life. Wait no further. There is evidence from reliable sources, people who were willing to give their lives for what they had seen and what they heard. People don't do that for something they're not sure of. We have reliable information from credible sources. And I want to give you an opportunity to respond, to take that small step. You might want to respond today by standing as we sing this last song. You might want to sit where you are. You might want to come kneel at the front. Some of you might want to come and go, God, I repent to you of not being more bold for you when you gave your life for me. And this simple, small step you might take in the next few minutes, whether it's standing, whether it's kneeling, whether it's reflecting in your heart, or whether it's coming down and getting on your knees, the truth is, I believe that small step will activate God's power in your life. You don't know what hangs in the balance of the small step of obedience God's calling you to. Let me pray for us. God, I pray as we sing in these next moments, I pray that people in the room would realize this isn't about music. They wouldn't worry about the person who's sitting next to them or behind them or in front of them, or the person they may have to climb over the aisle to come down front. The reality is I pray that they would realize and recognize it's you stirring inside of them. What's more important in this moment than the God of the universe stirring inside of us, inviting us, beckoning us to take a small step toward him? God, I pray that you would give us the courage to respond based on the way you're leading in this moment, and that we would trust you as we take this step. And as we sing, I pray this song would be an anthem for all of us, that will follow you regardless of what we've left behind, regardless of what's in our past. That we're gonna turn back and we're gonna look at that. We're not gonna get ourselves dragged back to something that you've forgiven or you've taken care of. But you're gonna lead us forward as we follow you, taking those small steps and ultimately following you with everything in our lives. I pray for somebody who's wanting to take that first step today to place their faith in you. I pray that they would boldly stand or boldly come and just say, Jesus, I will follow you. Now help me to know what that means. Pray for somebody who's been riding the fence today. Somebody who's been riding the fence in their faith and they know it. Nobody they work with knows they're a believer. Nobody in their circles of influence, and they so badly want to be bold for you. I pray that they would come with a simple expression that, God, I want to be all in, and I want to be more bold for you. Pray they would respond in this moment today as we sing. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
I will follow you, and I will follow you. No turning back, no turning back, no turning back, no turning back. Let's take this opportunity to respond this morning, Mission. This is my heart cry, though none go with me. The cross before me, the world behind me. This is my heart cry, though none go with me. The cross before me, the world behind me. I will follow you. I will follow you. We sing, no turning back, no turning back, no turning back, no turning back. This is my anthem, my life for your fame. Let every mood ring, glory to your name. This is my anthem, my life for your fame. Let every move bring glory to your name. I will follow you. I will follow you. Oh, no turning back. cross before me, the world behind. I will follow, and I will follow. The cross before me, the world behind me. I will follow, I will follow. The cross before me, the world behind me. I will follow, I will follow. No turning back, 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 no turning back.
Hey, if your heart was stirred about anything you experienced today or heard today in the service, you're encouraged to come down. We have the prayer team that's going to be down front right after services, or you can go over to the hub, and we got a team that would just love to pray with you and encourage you over there. Hey, we love you. You belong here. This is a place for everyone. Invite your friends as we continue our series, week 2, part 2 of Gone Fishing next week. Have a great week, everybody.